Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and I am wrapping up Jackson's Valley campaign with the fight for Port Republic. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider subscribing to it if you've not done so already, and consider joining the Patreon page. It was their membership that made this large set of maps possible. Stonewall Jackson on June 8th had bested two attacks by part of Shields' division and Fremont's entire force. Now he was determined to cause as much havoc to the Union Army as possible. Attacking the small force of Tyler and Carroll provided the best opportunity to land a significant blow to one of the two Union forces confronting him. A small force would hold Fremont in check, while he would attack Shields' two brigades near Port Republic. Jackson would move his brigades out of Port Republic. Tyler and Carroll were camped close by and hoping that Shields would arrive with reinforcements. He promised Kimball's brigade was on the way. Winder divided his Stonewall Brigade along the road, with the 2nd and 4th Virginia to the right and the 5th and 27th Virginia to the left. Confederate shells bursting near the Union camps interrupted the breakfast planned by Carroll and Tyler at 6 a.m. Carroll urged Tyler to withdraw, but he refused and deployed his and Carroll's regiments near the Lewis Mill and near a hill called the Coaling, where the Lewis family made charcoal for their blacksmith shop. Winder sent the 2nd and 4th to attack the Coaling, which artillery occupied. Making their way slowly through the thick underbrush took time, and when they got within rifle range, at least one artillery piece opened upon them with canisters, sending the Virginians scurrying back to safety. Winder hesitated to attack the Union infantry without adequate support, but he did advance the 5th Virginia forward a little ways to deal with the Union skirmishers. Jackson's brigades would be going in piecemeal, but he worked to get as many of them on the field as possible. The little town of Port Republic became congested with wagons, men, and artillery, which delayed reinforcements. Taylor's Louisiana Brigade made it through the town and sat down to prepare breakfast until Jackson rode up and ordered Taylor forward, with the 8th Louisiana in front. Stonewall rode ahead and began the placement of Taylor's brigade. The 8th and 9th Louisiana, along with Wheat's Tigers, deployed east of the road. Taylor was accompanying the 6th Louisiana and reported to Jackson for orders. Stonewall signaled for Hotchkiss to lead the 6th to the extreme right and outflank the artillery at the Coaling. Taylor struck off with the 6th and Hotchkiss, while the last of his regiments, the 7th Louisiana, filed to the left of the road to support Winder's men. The Louisianians situated themselves between the 5th and the 27th Virginia. Winder was elated with the reinforcements and decided to charge the Federal position. It was his best option. If he stayed put, his men would take unnecessary casualties from artillery fire, and if he pulled back, he would incur the wrath of Jackson. So his men took off toward the Union line. They stood toe-to-toe with the Federals for around an hour, exchanging volleys that destroyed their ranks. The 7th Louisiana lost half its strength in the exchange and was the first to start falling back for the rear. With their center disintegrating, the Virginians had no choice but to fall back as well, but as they fell back, the Federals pursued, fighting at every step of the way, pushing back part of the Stonewall Brigade. Jackson attempted to move more troops to the left flank that was caving in. He sent the 31st Virginia to the left as soon as the regiment made it to the field. However, the overwhelming numbers of the Federals pushed them back. Next came the 52nd Virginia. Winder used what soldiers he could to resist the approaching Federals, and the 52nd filed onto the left of the Confederate line. They made a noble stand, but the 7th Indiana and 29th Ohio pushed them aside as well. All the while, the Union right led a successful counterattack against Winder's brigade. The Confederate right was slowly advancing through the thick forest. Ewell had arrived on the field, but could not find Jackson to find out where to place the newest reinforcements, so he decided to support Taylor on the right. The 44th and 58th Virginia marched to the right of the road, but as they advanced, they saw Winder's men falling back and the exposed Union right flank open for an attack. Ewell turned the ranks to the left and delivered a deadly fire into the 5th Ohio. The volley surprised the Ohioans, but both the 5th and the 7th Ohio turned to face the Virginians and threw a deadly hail of lead into their ranks. The already small regiments grew even smaller with every blast from the blue ranks. Quickly, the Virginians fell back into the trees and would go on to support Taylor. The men from Louisiana were slow in the advance, but they made it to the Coaling, opposite the Federal artillery. The 66th Ohio met them as they advanced. They exchanged one volley, and Taylor ordered his men to charge the artillery and the infantry. Afraid that the artillery would get away, the order came down to eliminate the horses. Wheat himself pulled out a bowie knife and went to work, with one soldier describing him as bloodier than a butcher when he finished. With the animals stopped from pulling away the artillery, Taylor focused on the infantry, fighting the 66th Ohio and other regiments coming to the artillery's rescue. The 5th and 7th Ohio even stopped their advance on the right and delivered assistance, nearly attacking the rear of the Confederate line. However, the growing Confederate numbers on the battlefield was turning the tide in favor of the rebels. General Ewell, with his hat in his hand, led the 44th and 58th Virginia on foot in the charge against Tyler and Carroll's men. Hand-to-hand fighting broke out all across the line, and finally, the Union left finally broke. With the left collapsing, Tyler and Carroll ordered the withdrawal of the rest of the units on the field. They made their way toward Conrad's store, with the Confederate forces launching a half-hearted pursuit. Most of them were exhausted and did not give chase for more than 3 miles. Even Tolliver's brigade, who had arrived right before the Union withdrawal, could not mount a successful chase. When the battle ended, the Union lost 1,002 men, and the Confederacy lost 816. General Fremont launched a late morning movement against Jackson, but found the battle already over and the bridge he needed to cross to engage Jackson burned. No attack would be made. After the battles of June 8th and 9th, both Shields and Fremont withdrew from their position under directions from the President, believing nothing else significant could be done in the valley. Jackson stayed at Brown's Gap for a short time, then returned to the valley just a little west of Port Republic. He sent word to General Lee that if he could get reinforcements of around 40,000 men, he would invade the North and bring the war to Pennsylvania. But with McClellan at the gates of Richmond, Lee needed every man to send the Union Army of the Potomac back down the peninsula. So Jackson would leave the valley from which he had gained so much fame. Newspapers praised his accomplishments, with one newspaper calling him the Gamecock of the Valley. Another newspaper, which had previously called him of unsound mind, printed a correction stating, "Since that time he has exhibited not the least symptom of improvement. Within the last 2 weeks he seems to have gone clean daft. With his foot cavalry at his heels, he has been raving, ramping, roaring, rearing, snorting, and cavorting up and down the valley, chawing up Yankees by the thousands as if they were many grains of parched corn." An army nurse in Alabama, Kate Cummings, wrote, "A star has risen, his name, Stonewall. The haughty foe has found to his cost has been given prophetically, as he proved a wall of granite to them. For 4 weeks he has kept at bay more than one of the boasted armies." Not all praised him. Many of his commanders criticized him for pushing his soldiers too hard. They had seen their regiments and brigades wither away due to hard marching and fighting. Some regiments could barely field 100 men by the end of the campaign. Jackson's campaign was not perfect. He made tactical mistakes, like at Kernstown in Port Republic, where he threw his troops in piecemeal. At McDowell, he was taken by surprise when Milroy attacked his troops, and he lost more defending Sitlington's Hill than Milroy did attacking it. Although criticized for the hard marching, it did save his men from being cut off by Fremont and Shields after the victory at Winchester. Ultimately, Jackson accomplished what Johnston and Lee wanted him to do. He diverted enough Union troops away from joining McClellan on the peninsula. He used the Appalachian Mountains to great advantage to bypass Union divisions and to surprise smaller enemy forces. Slowly but surely, he lured the Union high command into a false sense of security, leading them to remove troops from the valley. Then he preyed upon the small garrisons and outposts to whittle away at the Union forces in the Shenandoah Valley. For all of his mistakes and successes, Stonewall Jackson's Valley Campaign stands out as one of the most impressive military campaigns of the Civil War and military history in general. His accomplishments in the Valley made his nickname earned at Manassas echo across the North as an unstoppable enemy, and through the South as a military genius and hero.